killing me, Smalls.
To infinity and beyond!
What the what?
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the What the What podcast. How you doing? I am your host, Eric Creech, and today, Kyle and Ashby have decided that they were on a break. They decided that they didn't really know much about today's topic, so they had me bring in one of my oldest, a really good friend of mine, Chad Casey. Chad, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Very privileged.
Now, Chad is someone. Now, I've known Chad since I was like 9 or 10 years old. He's got a few years on me. He's the older brother of a friend of mine from middle school, elementary school, high school. But I've known him forever, and he reached out to me on Facebook Messenger when we decided we were going to do an episode of Friends. Kyle and Ashby, they know nothing about the show. But this is our 90s season. We're doing a show on all 90s topics, and they just said, hey, it would be weird if we didn't have a show about one of the best shows of the 90s. So they said, hey, go find somebody. So we literally put out an all call on Facebook and on Instagram and on Twitter. Hey, if you are interested in the show Friends, you want to be on the podcast, you feel like you have information and you want to share that with the world, reach out to us. And Chad Casey sent me a message, and I'm like, okay, this is going to work. How are you? How are you feeling about being on your first podcast?
I'm a little nervous.
Is this your first podcast?
It is definitely the first podcast. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's easy. You know, as we said off the air, we're having a conversation. The fans, you know, they won't stalk you because, you know, they don't really know, you know, how to do that yet. So so I wouldn't really worry about having a David Arquette style stalker like Phoebe did in season 3.
Exactly.
But let's just go with it. So we're excited.
Good.
We're excited to have you, Chad, and we're thankful that you're on the show. And Chad will actually be joining us on our season finale of the 90s or the 9 on 90s season when we do our 90s movie draft as well. So check back in a couple of weeks. With that said, please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever it is you get your podcasts. And, of course, you can rate and review us. 5 stars only. We would ask for 7, but the ratings only go up to 5. So give us those 5 stars, or we will be inclined to think that you are a hater. You can also follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at What the What Media. That is all one word. And you can find us on Twitter at WTW_media. Now, at the top of the show, I said that we were going to be talking about the TV show Friends. Now, it's been on since 1994. It's on Nick at Night. It's on HBO Max. It was on Netflix for a hot minute. But if you haven't seen the show Friends, what are you doing, first of all? Secondly, this is a spoiler warning. Go watch the show if you do not want to be spoiled, because we will be talking about all plot points, episodes, anything related to the show Friends, including, you know, their HBO reunion special that aired a couple of months ago, possibly. So go check out those episodes of Friends before you listen to the show if you don't want to be spoiled. So with that said, let's jump into the episode. Chad, what is your history with the show Friends? I one of the reasons I wanted to ask you is I feel like you would have a different perspective on Friends because Friends aired when you were in your 20s. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so you were around the same age as the main characters. So what is your history with this show, and why is this show special to you?
Well, for me, it was back when I was in college or kind of finishing up college, and it was a kind of a peek into what living in New York, about the same age group, would be like. And being from Johnston County, born and raised, and has always lived here, it was quite a fascination to get a peek at what living in New York would be like. And so I would always go over to my mom's house, and my mom and my brother Andrew and I would all watch the show, and there was several shows on Thursday nights.
Must see TV.
Must see TV.
Yeah.
Exactly. We were right in the middle of that, and we would have our pizza and watch Seinfeld and Friends and Frasier and whatever else was on, and it was just a great family bonding time too, and we certainly enjoyed getting together and watching it, and it was just a great show to follow along with.
There's a show you mentioned, Frasier. Man, I loved that show now.
Oh, yeah.
The intro. And baby, I hear the blues calling, toss salad and scrambled eggs. Love it. But we're not talking about Frasier, but yeah. So for me, my history with Friends starts with syndication because it originally aired in 1994 on NBC Must-See TV, as you said, and I was 8 years old at the time. Probably not the target audience for Friends, even if it was on at 8 o'clock on NBC. So I ended up catching it. It would air every night at 7 o'clock on what is now the CW.
Right.
Back in the day, it was like the WB network.
Right.
And it would air after The Simpsons. The Simpsons would have 6 o'clock and 6:30, and then Friends would come on at 7. And I think everybody loves Raymond at 7:30.
Nice.
It's crazy just how that comes to mind immediately. So I was a big fan of The Simpsons. I probably also wasn't in their target audience either as an 8-year-old when it first aired. But, cartoons, Bart Simpson, whatever. So I was watching The Simpsons like religiously as a kid. And eventually as I got older, I would stick around and watch the show that was on at 7, which was Friends, which I believe that started airing a few years after, it premiered, in real time. So probably after about season 4, season 5, it started going into syndication, usually after 100 episodes.
Right.
And so I got sucked into watching that, probably as a teenager, 13, 14 years old. And that eventually led to me buying the season DVDs.
Yes, of course.
Because, that was how you binge stuff back in the day. You had to go buy the DVDs at Walmart or wherever. And then that eventually led to me watching the new episodes live for the last 2 or 3 seasons. So that was when I was 15 or 16 or 17 years old for seasons 8, 9, and 10. And it's special to me because, it highlighted the idea of friends who are family.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I love my parents. I love my family. My family dynamic was really, really weird because we had adopted my youngest 2 siblings whenever I was 11, and I have a 9 and 11 year age difference with them. And for me at that time when we adopted 2 kids, I kind of had to grow up at that point and stop being necessarily I was still my parents' child, but I also was helping with these younger kids.
You were kind of a caregiver, yeah.
In a sense. So, not that my parents didn't have time for me, but they were also focused on raising these 2 kids out of nowhere.
Right.
That they were not expecting to do. So I found a lot of my solace in my friends. A lot of my family I found in Friends, not just the TV show, but my actual friends at the time. Mm-hmm. So when I watched the show, and then you have these 6 people living in New York whose family dropped in from time to time, but they depended on each other. That really resonated with me. And the show also ended the year I graduated from high school in 2004. And I loved, in my head, I loved like the idea of symmetry between things that, my high school years were ending. End of an era. Friends was ending. It was the end of an era.
Right.
So that was special to me at the time. From there, I tried watching Joey. Bless that show. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I love Joey. I'm a spoiler alert. Joey's my favorite character, but I just they tried. They
really did. Part of it was with the Joey spinoff. I don't feel like the writers that they had understood who Joey was as a character, because for 10 years you had David Crane, Marta Kaufman, Kevin Bright, who were the creators, the directors, the co-founders of the show, the producers of Friends, and I don't think any of them went to Joey.
Right, no, it's completely
so different. It's like, they took special care of these characters, and then you handed it off to someone who probably loved the character, but didn't understand exactly what the character was.
Right.
So, I've never seen all of Joey's run. I tried, you still can't find it, I don't think.
I don't think so, yeah.
I've looked, because I know they had several episodes that didn't even air when they canceled it. And I've tried finding DVDs. I've tried finding it on streaming just to, see if it's different 20 years later.
Yeah.
And I still have not been able to find it. So, listeners, if you know where we can find episodes of Joey,
let us know.
So we can be true completionists, please let us know. So we can finish that. So you mentioned your favorite character is Joey. Why Joey?
Well, honestly, and you mentioned earlier about revisiting the series and everything. My wife Jen had not seen all of the seasons, so we, and luckily we're now new to streaming everything, so we binge watched all the seasons again within the last year, and that was another reason why I reached out to you, because now it gave me another perspective.
Fresh in your mind,
right?
Yeah.
Exactly, and so. Honestly, at first, when I first watched it, Chandler was my favorite because I identified with Chandler a lot.
Yeah.
At the time, especially because he was always the comedian, always wanting to make sure everybody was feeling good, and in often self-deprecating way.
Yes.
And, and then he, went through his struggles and everything too. I went through a little period of struggles as well, but then when I watched it again, it was like I didn't realize how Joey evolved from the first episode all the way through, and how much of a caregiver he was, how much he wanted to make sure everybody was taken care of and they were looked after, and how much love he had for Rachel and everything else. And so it was nice to see it in a different way.
For sure. You mentioned that you watched it over the past year, streaming it with your wife. My now fiance, we started watching it together. She had never seen the show either. So that was one of the things we did when we first started dating over a year ago, was we watched Friends. We finished it in March, like a month and a half ago.
Oh, nice.
It was really nice to revisit everything with a fresh pair of eyes who's never seen it before, too.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Joey in episode 1 versus Joey in season 10, they're the same character, but it's a growth of personality, growth of characteristics, growth as a human being. And I do think it fairly represents how we as people can grow from where we were in our early 20s to where we are now.
Yeah.
I was like you as well, and I still think Chandler is my favorite character.
Oh, yeah.
Because I identify with Chandler. I'm sarcastic. I self-depreciate with the humor. I like to make sure everyone's laughing. There was an episode where Monica says this person at work is the funniest guy she's ever met, and Chandler is like losing his mind, like, does she not know me?
Right,
like,
yeah, we've been around each other for all these years, yeah.
Like, and it's like, I identify with that. It's like, if Ivy would say, like, this person's the funniest, I'm like, are you, what? Are you serious?
Yeah, you
Wait,
take
what?
offense to that, yeah.
Like, because, I feel like funny is my thing. And, Chandler feels like funny is his thing.
Exactly.
So I've always identified with Chandler, but Joey, for years was my favorite character.
Yeah.
I liked his, how you doing?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Catchphrase. I think part of it me wanted to be like Joey.
Yeah.
Because he didn't lack for confidence.
Right.
He went out there. Whether he knew or not, if he was like the smartest character or not, I don't know if he was aware of his intelligence, but he didn't care about that. If he was aware, he just went out and he did what he wanted to do. He lived a fairly carefree life. I mean, like, there was an episode where like he was just sitting there and like, what have you done? He's like, well, I did that. I had like a bowl of cereal, and then I made some prank calls, and it's like, okay, I want to live like that.
Right,
That's great. Just have no worries. A true Hakuna Matata lifestyle.
Exactly.
And but I think over time, while I still love the Joey character, because I identified with Chandler so much, I think it led to me just really enjoying him more than anything.
Yeah.
Now, of the 6, you've got Rachel, Monica, Phoebe, Ross, Chandler, and Joey. Now, we know Chandler and Joey are among our favorites. You have a least favorite?
Yeah, and it really didn't come to light until watching it the second time around. Because, again, you watch it not only with a fresh set of eyes in Jen, my wife, but also from a different perspective. When you watch it in your 20s, your interests are different.
Yes.
Than when you're knocking on the door for 50. Sadly, but
you don't look it, dude.
Well, I appreciate it.
You have this energy. I wouldn't have been able to know that. So.
Well, I appreciate that, but yeah, honestly, Monica. With a 1 and then 1A Ross. So for some reason,
the Gellers.
Right, yeah, exactly. It was like, what is going on with the Gellers? But honestly, it was because to me, and I can identify partially with Monica because of her OCD. Mm-hmm. I have a healthy amount of that. However, she let it basically control everything, and she had such a great dynamic with all of her friends, and luckily they accepted her for who she was.
Right.
However, it was kind of like when you take her out, when you focus on her, it's like just hush and just kind of relax and let them put a drink on the table without a coaster or something, and so it. You kind of looked at it that way, and then from Ross's standpoint, in your 20s you're trying to date and everybody you can and do this, that, and other, and so the concept of marriage is kind of far off, or maybe far off. I don't know. It was for me, but so you don't really think about it as much. But then when you rewatch it, like I have, and you realize it's like Ross really didn't. Appreciate the sanctity of relationships and marriage. And then, first of all, why would you screw up a relationship with Rachel?
Yes.
I mean...
My goodness. This is the woman you've been pining for since high school.
Right. You've hit a grand slam.
Like that, yes.
Right. And just run the bases and
enjoy your victory.
Right, exactly,
yes. Ross.
We could do a show on Ross, probably.
It's really interesting. We've talked about the idea of watching it with fresh eyes, and in 2021, 22, as opposed to watching it when it first aired. And I think there's so much about the show that I love, but I do think there are some things about the show that are problematic in the era we live in now that wasn't as problematic 20, 25 years ago. I think a character like Ross, parts of him would work if you were to reboot this show or try to redo this show, but there's other parts that wouldn't work. For example, if you ask a woman out now and she says no, you better leave her alone at that point.
Right. Your chance is done.
Yeah, you're done at that point. But in the 90s, it's like, well, I'm going to keep pursuing and pursuing and pursuing, and it's like, that wouldn't work now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of toxicity in Ross and Monica, if we're being completely honest, that just, when you rewatch it, you're thinking, man, that wouldn't fly today.
Yeah.
With Ross is, I put Ross and or Rachel.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you on Monica in her tendencies to be overbearing and overly controlling. And I even, me and Ivy are in the middle of wedding planning now. And I looked at her after we got engaged, and I'm like, I really, don't want you to have a Monica experience.
Right.
As, when you're engaged or after we get married, I don't want you to have Monica's reaction. That's right. I'm no longer a bride.
Yeah.
I'm just somebody's wife now.
Right, yeah.
And I'm the happiest guy in the world.
Right, exactly.
Because, that's like, you just got married. Be happy.
Exactly, yeah. I know that it's a huge buildup to a wedding and everything, but at the same time, it's like, this is a transition to an even better
thing,
portion of your life, yeah.
And when she was planning that wedding with Chandler, the Chandler was like, well, what about this? She's like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
No, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
No, we're not doing that. And then after the wedding, it's like, well, did you do this? No. Did you do this? No. Well, what were you in charge of? I was in charge of the cameras, which Chandler lost.
Right.
But
bless his heart.
Monica pretty much took over, that all the aspects of the planning of the wedding and the engagement and stuff. And it's just, I want to be a little more hands-on than that.
Oh, yeah.
But when it comes to Ross, there is, I cannot remember I don't know if you're familiar with this. I don't know if it was a meme or something where like the idea of like aliens were watching this show, and one of them commented, "Why wouldn't Ross, the largest one, just simply eat the rest of the friends?" and like I look at Ross and like I just there are parts of him that I adore because he can be very endearing.
Yeah.
But on the rewatch, I'm like, okay, the relationship with Rachel. I mean, like you said, you hit a home run, dude. What in the world? I mean, be happy she got a job.
Right.
Stop being so jealous. Stop being overly controlling. Because that his fear was, I don't want to lose what I lost, what the best thing I had, and then by acting out in the way he acted out, he ended up losing.
Right.
You know, like he was the downfall of his biggest fear. I mean, so the way he was in relationships. I don't think I can ever forget or forgive the time he made a move on his cousin. Yeah. I know it was Denise Richards, but still.
Yeah. There's a line.
There's a line there. I don't care if it's Denise Richards.
And it's really not that thin. I mean, it's a pretty thick line.
It's a pretty thick line.
Yeah.
I just, Ross, on rewatch, I still adore all the characters, but Ross would probably have to be my least favorite. I didn't appreciate some of Rachel in some instances. She was very spoiled in some parts.
Oh, yeah.
And very it's like self-centered. When Ross made that list, like he was listing some things and spoiled, self-centered. I'm like,
oh yeah,
well, it's true, but you don't want those pointed out necessarily. You don't want your biggest character flaws pointed out to you as a reason not to date you. But
right.
Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent.
Well, a lot of those too were early.
Yes.
And, you know, like we gave a lot of credit to Joey for his evolution throughout the show. We have to give Monica a lot of credit. I mean, I'm sorry, not Monica. Rachel.
Rachel, yes.
A lot of credit.
She grew as well, absolutely.
Because, I mean, you know, from the very first episode, she comes into the coffee shop.
In her wedding dress.
Right, in her wedding dress. And I just won $1 million.
Yes.
That's my favorite, one of my favorite Chandler lines. But, you know, she evolved a lot as well, and in a good way.
Absolutely. That first episode, she's like, you know, like, Daddy, it's like I've been told all my life, you're a shoe.
Yeah.
You're a shoe. Well, maybe I don't want to be a shoe. What if I want to be a hat or a purse? No, I don't want a hat. It's a metaphor.
Right. It's a metaphor, Daddy. Yeah, oh, yeah.
But Rachel did grow into this businesswoman in fashion. I mean, just her character arc was incredible. We haven't talked about Phoebe. Before we get down to some of the other things we have listed on our script, what were your thoughts on Phoebe?
I feel like, honestly, and this is... I think really true in real life that you need your circle of friends that become family, which is a great opportunity if you're ever fortunate enough to experience that.
Yes.
I feel like you need a person in every one of those categories that checks off each one of those boxes. Okay, we need the funny guy. We need the pretty girl. We need this, that.
We need to protect her.
Right,
yes.
right. And so you also need the person that just kind of goes with the flow, just kind of along with the ride, you know, a breeze in the wind or whatever you want to say. And to me, that was Phoebe.
Yeah.
And she provided a lot of, you know, support for her group of friends. And she was always trying to, you know, at least make everyone happy and everything too, but she certainly marched to the beat of her own drum.
Oh, absolutely.
All the time, and never apologized for it, which is great.
One of the things I loved about Phoebe was she was not afraid to call the other friends on their crap.
Right.
Like, there was an episode where she was talking, it was the episode where Heckles died.
Right.
And Ross was talking about evolution or something, and Phoebe's like, eh. And Ross like, you don't believe in evolution? And she's like, well, it just seemed too easy for me. And Ross wouldn't let it go. And Phoebe's like, yeah, she called him. I was like, why do you care so much? Like, can you open up your mind to the possibility that you might be wrong on this?
Right.
Whenever Phoebe thought her mom was a cat.
Yeah.
You know, I thought like all the friends did a pretty good job of trying to support her, even though it seemed a little ridiculous. They didn't really agree, but Ross wouldn't let it go. And Phoebe's always calling Ross. Maybe it's just Ross that she's calling on his crap.
And I think, you know, to me, Ross and Monica, being brother and sister, they did a really good job making sure their character traits kind of aligned really well, in the fact that Ross may not have had the OCD like Monica did, but he also was very firm.
He wanted to be right.
Right, he wanted to be right.
Yes.
Exactly. And so I think, honestly, now, if you were to watch the show now, a lot of the things that they deal with still transfer to today's issues.
Yes.
Because to me, and I'm certainly not going to go down the road that you might think I'm going to go down.
Right.
But you have certain people or certain groups that feel like their opinion is the only opinion.
Yes.
And so that kind of resembles what Ross is like. And the thing is, to me, we all should be like Phoebe.
Yes.
And say, you know what? It might not be that.
Yeah.
And I need to respect that, it might not be that, and other people might think differently.
Phoebe represents the idea of listening to understand, and not listening to be right.
Right.
But also representing, sure, that might work for you, but this works for me.
Right.
And
Phoebe.
Phoebe.
And this is, and if I can just interject this one little comment, and this is a shameless plug for the show Ted Lasso.
Yes.
Which is what we just discovered that a few months ago or whatever, and we've already watched it twice all the way through. One of my favorite quotes for him is "Be curious, not judgmental."
Yes.
And I feel like, and honestly, I replay that at least once
That's
or twice
a
every day.
fantastic line.
Yeah, it really is.
Oh my goodness! So I have not seen all of Ted Lasso. I saw the first episode, and I've seen one scene. I believe it was at the end of season 1 with the darts.
Right, that is the greatest portion of that show.
That is
right.
a fantastic scene. I don't know anything about the show, but that story, that monologue he tells about his father.
Oh yeah.
Not to go. I did not expect us to go on a Ted Lasso a tangent here.
Sorry,
that's awesome. Yes,
but it is a shameless plug for it. Watch it, and this is one of my top 5 favorite shows already.
That's awesome. Phoebe was great. I loved Phoebe's growth as a character as well. But like you said, she marched to the beat of her own drum. I love that she was able to find happiness in the end.
Oh yeah,
because for all the characters, you would have thought, if they weren't going to put anyone, with someone at the end, it would have been Phoebe, because she was so independent and, as she says, floopy.
Yeah.
Or no, that was her mom, floopy or whatever.
Right.
But just, she literally did what she felt like she wanted to do. And it's what we loved about her. But the fact that she was able to find, when I say find happiness, I don't necessarily mean to indicate that you have to find someone to be happy. But it was something that she yearned for. Like, she was always off the beaten path, but she had such a rough childhood. She was homeless for a while. Her mom took her life. Her sister and her were estranged. I think Phoebe was looking for a bit of normal.
Right, yeah.
And so when she found that bit of normal, that was happiness for her, because she had already gone off the beaten path so much. Partly because of how, that's just how she was, but it wasn't a choice for her in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So when she found her group of friends, that was her family.
Right.
And then she was able to find a new normal with an actual nuclear family of her own.
Yeah.
So,
and each one of the guys that she dated throughout the series, to me, you rooted for them.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they were all great guys.
Yeah.
And so it was great that she was able to evolve like that as well. And because it was like certain ones with everybody else, it's kind of like, oh, I can't stand her, or I can't stand him, or whatever. They're not good together, or
you
whatever.
rarely saw that with Phoebe's.
Yeah.
I think the psychiatrist guy in the first season
might
have been the one exception.
Yeah.
And Alec Baldwin's character was very annoying whenever he was on.
Yeah.
But he was still a good guy. He was just very optimistic.
Right, yeah. Bless his heart.
But you're right. I've never thought of that before. All the guys she dated, those relationships ended for different reasons.
Right.
But they were all good, healthy relationships.
Yeah, and a lot of times those reasons were beyond either one of them's control. It wasn't like one of them decided to end the relationship.
Yeah.
It was either a research in Minsk or something like that.
Oh, Minsk. Poor David.
Yeah.
Poor David. Speaking of recurring characters, do you have a favorite recurring? With this show has been on for 10 or was on for 10 years. You had characters who appeared in multiple episodes across multiple seasons. David being one of those who showed up in season 1 as just a random guy that she was going to take to a New Year's party after they made a pact not to take people to dates to a New Year's party.
Right.
And then he ends up showing up in season 7 and then again in season 9. Do you have a favorite recurring character? Would it be David or would it be somebody else?
Actually, I kind of went off the beaten path with this one, and I'm not sure exactly what his technical name, his role's name was, but it was Bruce Willis.
Oh, yeah.
Only because he played 2 roles. I mean, he was Elizabeth's dad, so he had interactions with Ross, but he also dated Rachel.
Trying to think of his character. So Mr. Stevens was, his last name was Stevens. Paul.
That's right.
Paul Stevens, yes. So the great thing about, did you know the story about how Bruce Willis got on the show?
No.
Okay, so Bruce Willis was in a movie with Matthew Perry, who played Chandler.
Right.
They were in the whole 9 yards. And Bruce Willis was like, this movie's not going to do well at the box office. And Matthew Perry's like, I think it's going to do great. And Bruce is like, no. And Matthew's like, if it debuts at number 1, you need to come and do Friends. You're going to come and do Friends. Like, we're going to make a bet. You come and do Friends for free, basically. You're going to come and guest star on Friends if this movie debuts number 1. Since you're so sure it's not going to happen.
Right.
Well, the movie debuted at number 1, and Bruce Willis appeared on Friends, donated his salary to charity.
Oh, wow.
And appeared in, I think, 3 or 4 episodes at the end of season 6. But that's how Bruce Willis got on Friends.
That's fantastic. You learn something every day, even
absolutely.
if you think you know a little bit more. But that's awesome.
And I thought he did a fantastic job, both as the dad.
Yeah.
I prefer Lizzie's dates to call me Mr. Stevens.
Right.
And then as Rachel's, love interest.
Right.
There was a lot of good comedy there. Bruce Willis is a very underrated comedic actor.
Yeah.
Because he's been in so many action films, and with the recent news of his diagnosis of I cannot remember what it was, but I know he's retired from acting essentially. So we do send out our well wishes to him.
Definitely.
But he was fantastic.
Yeah,
he was fantastic.
And I like the fact that, like you said, he's normally an action character. And it was nice for him to see his comedic side and his comedic timing. To me, that's always. I mean, it's great to have things that you can say or do, but if you interject it at the right time, that's the biggest thing to me. And he had great timing.
So if you heard anything in the background there, folks, Kyle just came in, brought me some Starbucks, and just left. It's good to have service like that.
Well, I want the winning lottery tickets. Yes. I mean, why not?
Why not? How do you feel about Janice?
Janice was actually one of my favorites as well. She was my favorite. You said, let's see. Hold on just a second. I'm looking through my notes. I'm sorry. OCD. I've got to have my notes. My favorite recurring character was Janice. Because, and this is kind of, and I'm kind of going out in left field on this one, but because, now that we know Chandler had some issues in his real life, addiction issues, things like that. And we also saw it during the filming of a couple of episodes, or a couple of seasons, actually.
Yes.
But to me, it kind of symbolized his dependence on Janice, on the fact that that Janice was always a safety net.
Yes.
Always there.
A fallback.
Right, a fallback. Yeah, exactly. So that's why I loved her, and she knew that, and she knew that she could play on that at all times. And just her laugh was fantastic, too, because everybody always wanted,
oh my God.
Chandler Bing.
Hello, Chandler Bing. I can't do it anymore.
Oh, yeah.
I used to hate Janice. Yeah. She was so annoying, but now I love her.
To watch it again. Watch it again.
I love her.
Yeah.
She is one of the very few characters who wasn't part of the main cast who appeared in some form or fashion in every season.
Yeah.
The only season she didn't physically appear in, but she had a voice cameo, was season 6. And that voice cameo was when she was on a mixtape that Chandler gave to Monica for Valentine's Day.
That's right.
Yeah, I made you a mixtape, and it was actually from Janice to Chandler.
Yeah.
I love you every night, Chandler Bing. That's why I made you this tape. Happy birthday. Love, Janice.
That's awesome.
I also have to give a shout out to James Michael Tyler, who played Gunther.
Yes.
Gunther.
Yes.
He passed away recently.
Yes.
So R.I.P. to him. But he never played a major role in the story, with one exception. He was not the reason. he was the person who let it slip to Rachel that Ross had slept with the copy girl.
Yes.
That's the only time he's ever really played a major role in any storyline in Friends. I know he gave Joey a job working at the coffee shop one time.
Right. Very short-lived, yeah.
But other than that, he's just there in the background doing his thing, pining for Rachel's love and affection.
Yes. And that's probably why he probably enjoyed giving that detail of the copy girl to Rachel.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was I not supposed to?
Right, exactly, yeah.
So I love giving this little bits of information. Do you know how James Michael Tyler got on the show Friends?
I do not.
Okay, so he was an extra, working, in the background, extras in the background of Friends, had no lines. He stayed on because he was the only person who knew how to work the espresso machine.
Nice.
And
so
that
perfect, yeah.
And that led to him being on all 10 seasons of Friends.
And that was his not his natural hair. He had to dye his hair for those 10 years.
Yes.
Yeah. I did know that, yeah.
Yes. So, folks, if you're trying to make it big in the acting industry, make sure you have all your skills updated because this guy was a nobody, and because he knew how to work the espresso machine, he ended up on the greatest sitcom of all time. For 10 years.
Exactly.
Just because he knew how to work the coffee machine.
Right.
So. You mentioned Bruce Willis as one of your favorite guest stars. I put Brad Pitt.
Nice, yeah.
As a one-off guest star, a.k.a. Will Colbert, the founder of the I Hate Rachel Green Club.
That's right.
And he's on there for... I love the meta-ness of here's this mainly film actor, Brad Pitt, who's married to... one of the main characters, Jennifer Aniston, but her character actually his character actually hates his wife.
Yeah.
Like this.
It was a nice dynamic.
Yes. And I felt like that was just a really good episode. And the Phoebe trying to just hug him or touch him the whole time.
Yeah.
And then his look to Ross like, wait, you got her pregnant?
Yeah.
Dude!
Exactly.
So, did you have was Bruce Willis your answer for favorite guest star? Was that the
Yes, Bruce Willis, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Do you have a favorite couple from the show?
Long term, I've got two, and it seems like I've got two for every question that we've had. But
it's okay, I do too. So,
but as far as long term, Chandler and Monica. Obviously, because they kind of went through everything and everyone,
yes.
and finally ended up in what I would think would be the correct way. I mean that they should have been together.
Absolutely, I do love that they were friends, and I don't know if this was planned. I don't know if this was planned, but at the beginning of season 4, when they're at the beach. And it might have been actually at the end of season 3, beginning of season 4. But Chandler's like, I'm the last guy on Earth. Would you go out with me?
Yeah.
And Monica's like, eh.
Yeah.
And then at the end of season 4, they end up together.
Right.
And, something they didn't plan on as friends, ending up together. But it was literally, they were right there, in front of each other the entire time.
Yeah.
Now, in subsequent seasons, you find that Monica had a crush on Chandler originally. Whenever he came to visit for the first time, you could tell she was smitten with him.
Yeah.
Until he made his crack about, I don't want to hang out with your fat sister.
Right.
Bad on you, Chandler.
Right.
Bad boy, Chandler. Don't you do that.
Yes.
And then we find out she accidentally cut off his toe. The next Thanksgiving.
Miami Vice attire was great. And the floppy seagull's haircut.
Well, of course, it went right through a shoe. They're made of wicker.
Made of wicker, that's right.
But I do love that relationship. I put that on there as well. They went through a lot as a couple. They dated for a year. They got engaged. They got married. And then as a couple, they went through job changes.
Right.
Chandler, got transferred to another state, the Sooner State.
Right.
And so he was out of state. They had to juggle that, where they weren't living in the same area because she was going to move with him, and then she got an offer for a better job.
Right.
And so they tried to make that work. And then he was unemployed, trying to find a new career. So she had to support him. He found that new career in advertising. Was it bagels and donuts? Round food for every mood.
For every mood.
One of my favorite lines from him.
Oh, yeah.
They were trying to have children. They had fertility issues. They went through adoption. They went through. I mean, they were like the. I know they were the couple that. I'm trying to think of the best way. They went through a lot of stuff as a couple. They were like a real life couple in the sense that they went through a lot of issues. They were like the avatar for real life issues on the show.
Yeah.
And it's still, every time I see Chandler tell Monica, we got the call from so-and-so, and, he said we can keep trying, but there's a good chance this may never happen for us. And just the heartbreak in that scene still gets me every time I see it. But I really love that couple. They're my favorite couple as well, just because they represent not only the highs of what a relationship looks like, the happiness, but also some of the things you have to go through as a couple.
Right.
What was your other couple? You said you had two.
My other couple, short term, was Chandler and Kathy.
Kathy, yes.
Because honestly, I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, I had a big crush on Kathy because I thought she and Chandler were perfect for each other. Even though, obviously, she was with Joey. It was just so clear cut that they were better matched for each other.
The Velveteen Rabbit.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Too bad that Joey. Well, no, it's Chandler. It's Chandler's fault. But Joey's like, when they have heat on stage, then they're not together. But when the chemistry's gone,
right,
then that means they're doing it off stage.
Off stage, yeah.
And Chandler is like. Goes to this place like, okay, they had heat the other night. Now they have no heat.
Right.
There's no heat at all.
Right.
And that gets in his head.
Yeah.
And then, she wasn't sleeping with him.
Yeah.
She is now.
Right. She is now. That's right.
And Joey's defense like, whoa, that was just a theory.
Yeah.
There's a lot of theories that didn't pan out.
Right.
He's like lone gunman.
Yeah.
Geometry.
That's right.
Oh, but then also his explanation. Y'all seen me on stage. Have I ever had chemistry with any girl I've ever worked with?
Right.
No.
Because I was sleeping with them, in real life.
That was a good couple, though. But that was also, I think, one of the last relationships before he got with Monica.
Right.
That happened in season 4.
Yeah.
And one of the things, I actually alluded to it at the very beginning of the episode where Monica's seven.
Yeah.
Like, Monica was teaching Chandler,
right?
How to.
He had a peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
And so whenever they got together, he knew what to, because he learned from her already.
Right.
So
the 7 steps.
The 7 steps.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, shout out to Mike and Phoebe who made it work.
Oh yes. Yes.
Love Mike and Phoebe.
Yes.
And of course we'd be remiss without mentioning Ross and Rachel.
Oh yeah,
not necessarily a favorite couple, but I am glad they ended up together. I felt like the show had to end up with them together since it was about them for so long.
Right.
But yeah, favorite storyline in the show. Do you have a favorite storyline?
And to me, I had it, but it didn't develop until later, and it was still not really one that was heavily written about, I guess you could say, would be Joey and Rachel's unrequited love.
So let me ask you this, because a lot of people who are friends of the show, I feel like they're torn. Some people were like, Ross and Rachel should never have been messed with. It should have never. Rachel and Joey should have never been a thing.
Yeah,
because it was Ross and Rachel.
Yeah.
And some people are like, no, Rachel should have ended up with Joey.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
Where do you fall on that side of the line where you think Rachel and Joey, that was a relationship that should have kept going?
I feel like, honestly, I would love to have seen it go a little bit farther, at least. I'm not saying that was the ideal end result that should have happened, because, again, it should have been Ross and Rachel. I mean, because they went through so much trials and tribulations and stuff. But I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of Joey and Rachel, because Joey deserved it, in my opinion.
Yes. I agree with that.
All that what he put forth in it, and in just the happiness of all of his friends. I mean, he stepped aside with Kathy. He stepped aside with almost everyone.
He always put his friends first.
Right. And then you finally see a point where, and you could literally see it in his face, that he was, that Rachel was who he wanted to be with. And then he realized, hey, this is not supposed to be.
Wow.
And that to me for him, and that's what boosted me into his for me being Joey being my favorite character. Was now looking back, watching it the second time, and realizing all of that as the seasons progressed.
That's a really good way to look at it. Like I said, people are torn. Fans of the show, I hear both opinions equally. That, a lot of people think that whenever Joey and Rachel got together, that was a sign that the writers were out of ideas.
Yeah.
But others no, that was a sign of growth. These were people who, similar to Monica and Chandler, who were friends for a long time and realized their feelings for each other over time.
Right.
But just weren't able to make it work because of life circumstances.
Right.
I think their relationship was very sweet. I think if they had more time, because the last season was only 18 episodes long. It's normally 24, 25. But their relationship only lasted for about 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah.
Part of that, I believe, is because they were running out of time and they had to get to a point
wrap it up,
where things were in place where they wanted to end things.
Yeah.
And I do feel like they rushed it.
Yeah.
I felt like if they had another 6 episodes, they could have stuck the landing. They stuck the landing really well.
Oh, yeah.
9.7, 9.8. I think they could have gotten 10.0 if they had 5 more episodes.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, all the actors, Jennifer Aniston especially, was at the time one of the top 5 actresses in the world. I mean, she was making movies left and right at that point.
Yeah.
So we were just fortunate to get her back for 18 episodes.
That's right.
But I agree. That's a really good storyline. I really enjoyed the story of Monica and Chandler hiding their relationship.
Yeah.
Early on, and they did it for a good half a season.
Yeah.
Joey found out kind of early on, and then Rachel found out a little bit, and then finally Phoebe gets. And but the idea of them hiding their relationship and doing the episode where they're in the bathtub. The episode starts in the bathtub,
yes.
and Joey's knocking on the door. I'm coming in.
Yeah.
First of all. I've lived with several roommates over the years, and none of my roommates would ever come into my bathroom like that. I'm sorry. I don't care how close we are. You stay out of my bathroom when I'm in there.
Exactly.
But Chandler and Joey, different, whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, I'm going to go get some chicken, Or no, Chandler's like, how's your date? He's like, oh, my date threw up. And Joey's just standing there, and Monica's holding her breath under the water.
Yeah. Very impressive feat, by the way.
And then she comes up, and he's like, I'm so sorry. He wouldn't leave. He kept talking about chicken. And she's like, chicken?
I could go for some chicken.
I go for some chicken. Hey, Joe! Let me get a 2-piece and a Coke. Diet Coke.
Diet Coke. That's right.
When everyone switched apartments
Yeah.
for a good, I think it was about 6 or 7 episodes in season 4. That was a fun little story. Monica getting the boys' apartment spruced up because she's always the hostess.
Oh, yes.
Chandler and Joey finding free porn on their TV, and Monica.
Yes.
I mean, just that was really funny to me. And then also at the same time, a parallel to that, Phoebe carrying her brother's triplets was one of my favorite stories as well.
Oh, yeah.
So just the watching her freak people out with, oh no, none of them are the father, but the father is my brother.
Right. Oh yeah. That whole every time there was so many opportunities to make a cringe-worthy joke.
And Rachel's like, I'm going to miss you freaking people out like that.
That's right.
Which apartment? There's a lot of great apartments on this show.
Oh yeah.
Which apartment would you rather live in?
Monica and Rachel's.
Why?
And here's, I mean, honestly, the cleanliness of it. Obviously, I mean, you're walking into a pristine apartment, but the clincher for me was their outside space, the deck with the large window,
patio,
and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. But the downfall of that one was the view of ugly naked guys.
Yes,
I mean, so you would have to kind of try to balance that, But to me, that's why I like that apartment. I mean, obviously, you want to pick other apartments. And Jen, when I was reading the script and everything to Jen, she was like, well, why didn't you think about Ross's apartment? And I'm like, it never really entered my mind. But Ross's apartment would have been a cool place.
That's exactly what I put Ross's apartment, a.k.a. Ugly Naked Guy's apartment.
Right.
Is criminally underrated.
It is. It really is.
And part of the reason because like they say in that episode where Ross moves over there, your eye immediately goes to the big naked guy.
Right.
You never notice how good of a place he has.
Right, yeah.
I know a lot of people, I understand why people would say Monica's apartment, because it is the nicer apartment of the 2 main apartments.
Right.
So about a month ago, me and Ivy went to Washington, D.C., and they had a Friends exhibit there.
Awesome.
And they had all the sets.
Yeah.
And that's the main reason we went to D.C. I'd never been to D.C. in my life, other than to fly out of the airport. And But when they said this was coming to DC, I was like, y'all, you want to go to DC? We can go check out some other museums and stuff, but this is coming.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so we went and checked it out. And Monica's apartment's very comfortable, very cozy. The recliners, the Barca loungers in Joey and Chandler's apartment are very comfortable, though.
Oh, of course.
Very comfortable.
Yeah.
But I understand why people would say Monica's apartment. We are sleeping on Ross's place, so I think it is very cool.
Yeah.
Here's a place that I didn't even think about until late last night. Phoebe's place, especially whenever it burns down or whatever, or it catches on fire, and they replace the 2 bedrooms with 1,
right?
And then they mentioned they have they mentioned they have a skylight in there,
yeah.
I'm just saying,
right? Yeah,
nice little skylight,
right? You know, I hate for the fire to create that,
but you have a super large bedroom now,
right? Yeah,
just saying.
That's a good point. Yeah, you did bring up the Barca Lounger, but that episode where they spent the whole episode in their chairs.
It's a classic episode.
Really
and they talk about on the reunion where Matthew Perry was like, this episode's going to be so boring. And Joey's like, no.
It's fantastic.
It's fantastic because the humor is in the fact that we're not moving.
Oh, yeah. And then when Rachel came in, she said, well, I'm taking off my top or whatever. And then Joey's got that like a dental mirror or something like that.
Like a fork or something.
She's not. She's
not. I love, they're like, okay, we got the food ordered. We never have to leave.
Yeah.
And they're like, what about the bathroom?
Yeah.
And Chandler's like,
I'll cancel
the sodas. And when he's calling, he's like, hey, when you bring the food, ring 19.
Right.
Not 20. Ring Geller Green. They'll let you in. If you ring us, there's no tip for you.
That's right.
Great episode. Yeah. Joey in Chandler's place loses points because Joey cut one of the doors in half.
Oh, yeah.
But you know,
rookie mistake in the woodworking world.
Yes, I was going to say you do a lot of woodworking as a hobby.
Yeah.
How did you feel about Joey's fine Italian craftsmanship?
I did appreciate it. I really did. He did a great job. Obviously, the proportions were not conducive to their apartment, but at least he was able to prove the robbers true when he was able to climb in.
It's a grown man.
And
I did ask when we went to the set because they had that entertainment system or unit there. If I could try to fit in, they told me I couldn't do it.
Yeah, it was worth a try.
I was going to offer like, hey, I'll try to get in there. You can try to. They had the hockey stick in the little thing,
ready to go. Yeah,
Hugsy was chilling on one of the things.
Nice.
I mean, it was great. They're like, no, we can't allow you to do that. I'm like, okay, well, fine. I tried.
It was worth a shot. I mean, you have to ask.
You do have to ask.
Because
my question is, how many people ask? Because
right, exactly.
I feel like only I would think of something like that. But then again, if you're going to a Friends exhibit, you're probably as big of a fan of the show. There's probably more people like me out there who would ask. So I wonder how many times they get asked that question. Can we actually fit a grown man in there?
Oh, yeah. Because the thing is, it's like, and this is something I try to live by a little bit more lately, is if you never ask, the answer is always going to be no.
Yeah, the worst thing they can say is no.
Right.
And then you're in the exact same spot you were.
Right. Then when you get home and your buddies and your family, how did you do this? Did you ask for it? It's like, I asked. They said no, but hey, at least I asked.
So one of the great things about Friends is they had a tradition every year where they would usually have a Thanksgiving episode. It's one of their trademarks, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
They technically had 9 Thanksgiving episodes. Season 2 had one that was kind of a tie-in to Thanksgiving with the mocklet.
Oh,
they want to make mocklet the Thanksgiving chocolate or whatever, Thanksgiving dessert.
Oh. And me being a big fan of chocolate, I just could not. I could barely.
I love the way it bubbles up like that.
Right, yeah.
The way it crumbles.
Yeah.
How much mocklet did you have? Some. Okay, well then you're probably good.
Probably good. Yeah.
You're probably good. But we won't count that. But there were a lot of really good. I felt like they put their best foot forward on most of their Thanksgiving episodes.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So instead of saying best Thanksgiving episode, you can't just narrow it down to one. So I said top 3, and here's the funny thing: on my list, I actually have 4. So.
Oh, nice, nice.
So what are your top 3 Thanksgiving episodes?
My number 1 would be the one with Chandler in a box.
Chandler in a box.
Yep. And again, that's because I love Kathy as much as I did, but it was just also a great episode in the fact that it showed just such a dedicated friendship, and again, it was Joey saying, you know what, the realization that Chandler and Kathy were probably more compatible than he was with her. And but just the whole box thing, and then seeing Kathy come in and tell Chandler goodbye through the box, and Chandler's putting his index finger through the little
and then the little bye-bye.
Yeah.
Oh, that breaks your heart.
Oh, it really
my
does.
Goodness.
And then Joey finally said, well, you did a lot of good thinking in there, or whatever. He said,
some
go
good
get her.
thinking in there.
Yeah. That was
some real good thinking.
Yeah, that was some real good thinking. But that was definitely my number one. Let's see, my number two would have been the one where they played football, because it was a neat kind of almost a family type tradition. That a lot of times when you go over for holidays and you don't really have a whole lot to do, and your whoever's cooking doesn't really want you to be in the kitchen, so it's like y'all go out and do something, watch football or play football or whatever. And it was just great that none of them were really tremendously athletic. Obviously, Joey was a little bit more athletic, but then obviously Monica was super competitive with everything. And they were trying to impress that Russian model or whatever she was.
I think she was Dutch.
Okay, Dutch.
She was from the Netherlands.
Right.
And Joey's like, okay, he's joking.
Right.
Netherlands a place in Peter Pan.
God bless him. Yeah. But yeah, so that was certainly my second one.
I will say, just when they were like, yeah, let's go throw some football, and then Ross was like, we can't play football. Yeah. Why did your parents, tell you can't? Like, yeah, we can't.
Exactly, yeah.
How about we bunny up?
Right.
What? Bunny.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. It's like, oh, wow.
And then poor Rachel.
Yeah.
And now I pick you. You don't pick me. You're stuck with me.
Yeah. And she was back in the back corner of the end zone. And,
why don't you just stay there?
Right, yeah. Just go ahead and stay there, yeah. That was great. And then I have to mention the third one was with Rachel's trifle.
The one where Ross got high.
Yeah, where Ross got high. Yep, exactly.
Oh, that episode. So, real quick, shout out to the one with Chandler in the box for Monica's great quote, because she had ice in her eye in that episode, and she went to go see her eye doctor. Yeah, which was Richard. And, she's like, I can't go see, Richard whenever, I can't go see him when I don't have a boyfriend. Yeah. And Chandler's like, wow, he has really high standards for his patients. Yeah. Well, his son was actually the on-call doctor. Richard wasn't there. So she's starting to, go, and she gets, this vibe from Richard's son. Yeah. Timothy Burke. Yeah. So she invites him to Thanksgiving, and Ross, everyone's making jokes, and Monica's like, fine. Judge all you want, but points to Ross. Yeah. Married a lesbian, points to Rachel. Left a man at the altar, points to Phoebe. Fell in love with a gay ice dancer, points to Joey. Threw a girl's wooden leg in the fire, then points to Chandler. Lives in a box.
Yeah, exactly. That was great. Yeah.
So my favorite one is the one where Ross got high.
Yeah.
That's season 6. That is with the trifle. Some of the best episodes are ones where they're only in one location. Yeah. They're called bottled episodes, or bottle episodes, not bottled, bottle episodes, because they're in one area. Mm-hmm. They usually shoot these to save time on budget, because they don't have to worry about all the other sets. They can focus on one or two sets, and that's it. Right. So this is one of those episodes where there's a couple of scenes in Joey's apartment. They're mainly in, Ross and Chandler's apartment at that point. Ross and Rachel's, right? Or not Ross, Monica and Chandler's apartment. Yeah. At that point, Ross's parents are coming over. Chandler, they don't know that Chandler and Monica are dating, or engaged. No, dating. Excuse me, they're not engaged yet. They don't know they're dating, even though they've been dating for over a year at this point. Because Monica's like, they don't like you, and Chandler doesn't know why, so he's trying to impress them. Yeah. Ross finally realizes, oh wait, back in college, remember we were young. Right. I had, I got high, and then I blamed it on you. Yeah. And so that's going on. Phoebe is having some naughty dreams about Mr. Geller. Right, that's right. And Jacques Cousteau, apparently. Yeah. Rachel is doing a dessert. Monica's not going to do any dessert. She's doing the trifle. And Joey and Ross discover, because the pages were set together, apparently Chandler's fault. That's a dirty joke that we won't get into. Right. That she made half an English trifle and half a mincemeat pie. Is it mincemeat pie or shepherd's pie? Mincemeat pie.
Okay, mincemeat pie. Yeah,
shepherd's pie. Either one.
Right.
Whichever,
It was a pie of some sort.
Pie that had beef sauteed with peas and onions.
Right.
And they're like, well, we don't want to, make her feel bad.
Yeah.
Because, she's already self-conscious about this, so, we'll just have to eat it.
Yeah.
And then Joey and Ross really want to go to Joey's roommate's little party with her dancer friends.
Right,
they're going to be dancing and drinking.
Yeah.
They really want to go. And then that breakdown where everyone is just having like this realization, like Phoebe's like, I love Jacques Cousteau. Rachel's like, I was supposed to put beef in the trifle. Joey's like, I want to go.
Yeah.
Hurricane Gloria didn't knock down the porch swing. Monica did.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of information in 30 seconds. And
That's
then
right.
Ross's mom just like, okay, well, Joey, if you want to go, just go. Rachel, you weren't supposed to put beef in the trifle. It did not taste good. Phoebe, I'm sorry, but I think Jacques Cousteau's dead. That breakdown to me is just one of the greatest things. And then Chandler ends up being the favorite son. Like, I'll work on him.
Right.
The one with all the Thanksgivings,
yes,
is another great one. Just the flashbacks, especially with Phoebe.
Always,
in another life, she's working the Civil War or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh no. She's her Thanksgiving is
right. Well, she was like a
nurse or something.
Right,
yeah, and then her arm gets blown off. That was her worst Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And then the one with the rumor, which is the one where Brad Pitt showed up, and they started a rumor about Rachel in high school where they said she both had male and female reproductive parts.
Right.
And they're like, you started that rumor? And it sounds like everyone at my school heard that rumor.
Yeah.
That was a great episode as well to me.
Yeah.
All right. We got 2 more categories, and then we're going to get out of here. Top 3 overall episodes.
All right. I've got the one where everyone finds out.
Yes.
That's my top one.
Yes. Let's talk about that real quick, because that's on my list as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So at this point in the series, Monica and Chandler had been secretly dating for about half a season, so about 12 episodes. They got together at the end of season 4. This is episode 13 of season 5. Yes, I just pulled that number out of my head.
That's impressive.
Don't ask.
That's impressive.
Okay, it's a gift and a curse.
Yeah.
And Joey had already found out. He put 2 and 2 together somehow.
Yeah. And I love the fact that, just a quick sidebar,
yes.
I love the fact that Joey was the first to find out.
Oh, yes.
Because it was clearly he was the biggest one to struggle with that information. Mm-hmm. And so I loved how they played upon
I'm going to tell somebody.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And then Rachel finds out by overhearing it on the phone. Mm-hmm. Laundry, is that my new nickname?
Is that my new nickname? Yeah.
Oh, you know what your nickname is, Mr. Big. What? Yeah, I was calling him Mr. Bigot. He tells the worst racist jokes.
Yeah.
And then Phoebe finds out because they're looking at Ugly Naked Guy's apartment with Ross. Ross is going to go fill out an application, and then Phoebe sees them across the street. Hey, you guys! Hey!
Oh,
and
my eyes!
They start taking their clothes off, and Rachel and Phoebe are like, oh, my eyes! Yes. And then her table read of that at the reunion. Have you seen the reunion?
Yes.
Her table read of that is still perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Just fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
So why is that your favorite episode? Sorry,
mainly because just the fact that they were all trying to play against each other. They had kind of like a team. You had.
They don't know that we know that we know that we know.
Right. And Joey was just like his head was about to explode by the end of that, and then having Phoebe trying to entice Chandler with her womanly wiles,
yes.
and
with my greatest asset, my sexuality.
Right, exactly, yeah. And then when Joey was like, mess with your bra, he can't work them.
He doesn't understand them.
And then he popped it, and he was like, "Oh, you didn't even break a button." Where is it? It's not my first time.
Not my first time.
But it was just, and I love that. And then when of course Phoebe was like, "I'm very bendy,"
yes,
and then they were trying to touch each other, and they were barely touching, like with a fingerprint. That was about it, And so it was just, to me, I love that because of the back and forth. It was great.
Absolutely. And of course, the end, like, okay, no more hiding. Everyone knows, and actually, Ross doesn't know, and we'd appreciate it if no one told him yet. But by the end of that episode, he knows.
Oh yeah.
Nice callback because he had some anger issues. He was on sabbatical,
right?
And he was talking about going back to the museum, and then he sees his his best friend and his sister. And he's like, no, what are you doing?
Get off my sister. Yeah, oh yeah.
All right, what else do you have?
The one with the prom.
The prom video?
Prom video, yes.
Yeah.
Because that was really sweet.
That's the first time they actually got together, in a sense. Like
Right.
they had had a moment where they were going to get together, and then they make that list.
Yeah.
That was also the Mocklet episode.
Right.
And then that's the episode where Phoebe's like, you're her lobster.
Right, exactly.
You're going to end up, lobsters when they have the claws.
And
then Ross tried to re-explain that to Rachel.
He bombed it,
and Phoebe's like, do the claws again.
Do the claws again, yeah.
But then she sees how far his love was and how deep it was, even back then, that he was... he was going to go get dressed up in a tux to make sure she didn't have any sadness on her prom night.
That's right.
And she had no idea that that it had happened.
Right.
It's a great episode.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a third one on the list?
Third one would be the one with the proposal part 2, because Monica and Chandler.
Yes.
And it it didn't, and it kind of, to me, was like a microcosm of life. It's like no matter how much you plan and you try to get things coordinated, things sometimes don't work out, but in the end, if you kind of let the world go, then it ends up working out for you.
Absolutely.
And it was just such a sweet moment.
A great send off for Richard too.
Yeah,
A great send off for him. Excuse me. I also had the one with the embryos.
Yeah,
that's the trivia episode, basically, where Ross. The guys were versus the girls.
Yeah.
And,
that was great.
They ended up betting the rooster and the duck, or the birds, versus the apartment. You learned so much information about everyone in that episode.
Big fat goalie.
Big fat goalie.
That's not even a word.
What is Chandler Bing's job?
You're right.
How many categories of towels does Monica have? 11.
11. Yeah. Fancy guess.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, good stuff. And then for me, this is like my wild card. It's the one with the videotape. This is the one where they're trying to determine who came on to who whenever Ross and Rachel got together and Rachel ended up pregnant.
Right.
And Ross is like, I have it on videotape. And like, that's not a good look.
Right, yeah.
But then the story about backpacking in Eastern Europe and how it tied into Joey's fake name that he uses, that he just briefly mentions at the beginning of the episode. Hi, I'm Ken Adams.
Yeah.
And Phoebe, Regina Phalange, she's used that several times.
Obviously,
but we've never heard Joey use the name Ken Adams before.
Right.
And then Rachel's like, no, I heard it from a friend who heard it from some guy. And Joey's like, some guy. And she's like, no. She said his name was Ken Adams. He's like, Ken Adams. I love that episode so much that back in the day when I used to play NCAA football, and I would create a player.
Yeah.
His name would be Ken Adams.
Nice.
Like he would always go like to Oregon or something like Ken Adams, quarterback.
That's a good name too.
It's great quarterback name.
Oh yeah.
All right, last question before we get out of here.
Okay.
If HBO Max were to do a 10-episode revival series on the show Friends, what should the series be about? How would you set up this revival series? What would you do?
I would like to just see just kind of pick up with what their lives are like now. Kind of a peek into what's going on now with some flashbacks, because honestly, some of their what if flashbacks were the greatest things.
Oh, absolutely.
Throughout the whole series. But I would love to just kind of, and it was kind of put a nice little bow in it.
For sure. So here's what I would do. I would have the series be about Monica and Chandler's twins. Have maybe one other friend from the siblings or the other friends, be a part of the main cast. Have some other random characters, kind of the way Phoebe was not related to anybody, Chandler wasn't related, Joey wasn't related to anybody.
Yeah.
And just have that be the show. Be Friends featuring, you have two siblings.
Yeah.
One person who's related to the main cast. That's how they're connected. 3 randos, rando kids, and then just have the friends, like the main cast, like Monica, Chandler, have them guest star from time to time.
Pop in,
kind of like Ross and Monica's mom and dad did, or Rachel's mom and dad did, and but have it be about the kids.
Yeah.
With random guest star appearances from the original cast.
That's nice. I like that approach.
I feel like that would give it a more fresher look. It wouldn't be reviving the series necessarily,
right?
But it would take it up maybe upon a new. A new spin, a new coat of paint on it necessarily.
Yeah. I could see that.
So
that's awesome.
All right. Final thoughts on the show Friends, Chad.
To me, it was a great show, unreal character chemistry. Love the fact and writing as well. Never really tried to be something that was not. It was a good slice of life for the time. They never really delved into a lot of the politicalness or any other issues. And the cast stayed together.
Yes.
My thing is they didn't have to bring in a lot of additional cast members to fill voids or to complete a storyline or whatever, because a lot of shows kind of meet their downfall when they do that.
Yes.
And so I'm always impressed with that show.
For me, a true ensemble cast. You didn't have just one star. All six of them were the star.
Exactly.
Like you said, it was a good reminder of how television should be an escape from life.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't delve into the stuff that goes on outside of the box that we're watching. It was meant to be funny, and it was. It was meant to evoke feeling and emotion, and it did. It was a reflection of life in some scenarios, love, friendship, family. It was, and those are the things I take away from it. For me, it was a show that I discovered seriously when I was 13 or 14 years old. I'm 35 now, and it's still one of my favorite shows. I don't watch a lot of new television now. I think I'm watching Better Call Saul and Survivor, and those are the only shows that I'm watching as they air.
Yeah.
And a lot of my stuff is just old stuff, or I'll catch up on stuff after it airs or whatever. But Friends has always been a constant. It's always been there for me. It's always showed me that just because life, just the way the theme song goes out, so mom, no one told you life was going to be this way.
Yeah.
Clap, 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 clap. I mean,
right, exactly.
You still have there is a way to live where you have a group of people who are not only just friends of yours, but they're truly family. They touch you in that way, and I just I love this show. I love the characters. I love what it represents, and whenever they had the the reunion last year, it was just so good to see those people again.
Yeah.
And I don't think we'll ever see that again, honestly. I really don't. I know Matthew Perry's coming out with a book at some point this year, and it doesn't sound like it's going to be a pleasant one with some of his experiences, and that makes me really sad.
Yeah.
And I'll probably end up reading it, but I really don't want to, because I want to capture what this show means to me, and I want to keep that feeling.
Right.
But overall, probably my favorite show of all time.
Oh, yeah.
So
it's certainly high up there with me as well, and it's great to have been able to experience it and then revisit it whenever you have some time to kind of let it lie for a while, because you appreciate it that much more.
And that might be the secret to really to continue to enjoy it, is let it, maybe in 10 years go back and rewatch it again.
Yeah.
And see how things look different to you. For me, it would be when I'm 45, compared to how it was when I was now 35, or 10 years ago when I was 35, or when I was in high school, and how my perception of the series changes upon each rewatch.
Oh, yeah.
It does take a good 10 months to watch everything if you're watching a couple episodes a night.
Casually, exactly.
And you're not going to do it every night. So
yeah.
Chad, thank you so much for joining the show.
Yeah, man.
You've knocked it out of the park. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. And we're going to actually have you on in 2 weeks for our finale of the 9 on 90s finale, which is the 90s movie draft.
Sweet.
So Colin Ashby will get to experience how awesome you are. I'm very grateful that you were able to join us for this episode, and I can't wait for you to be on more episodes. I think you're going to carve out a niche if you're interested in future episodes and future seasons with us.
Awesome. I look forward to it. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yes.
And it was great working with you again. We used to have our tournaments
all the
time. It was great.
But I don't know if you remember this, and those people who've listened to this podcast for since we started may have probably already heard the story. I think it was one of the first stories I told on one of our early episodes. It was an episode on video games.
Yeah.
And I remember back in the day we were playing WCW NWO Revenge. And me and your brother were up against it. He was Raven.
Oh, yeah. He had to be Raven.
The even flow DDT.
Yes.
And I was not into wrestling as much as I am now at that time, because I didn't have TNT or USA, couldn't watch Raw or Nitro, and they didn't have SmackDown on UPN at the time. but I knew who Goldberg was.
Yeah.
So I picked Goldberg.
A solid pick, yeah.
And I didn't have a Nintendo 64 at the time, so the only time I ever got to play was at Andrew's house.
Yeah.
Or your house, and you and Andrew. And he was killing me.
Yeah.
He hit me finisher after finisher. And I discovered that if you hit the joystick whenever you're pinned, he kicks out automatically. That was a glitch in the game that no one knew about. And I just happened to discover it while I was playing. Like I was just hitting buttons trying to get out, and I'd kick out every time I hit the joystick. So I made sure to hide it. He hit me with 20 finishers, 20 even flow DDTs, and I finally made the comeback and beat him after 2 spears and a jackhammer.
Nice.
And Andrew was so mad, like, how?
Yeah.
Like we kept counting at 20. We don't know how many it actually was.
Yeah.
We finally started keeping count. We got the 20 after we started keeping count.
Yeah.
And I finally had to come clean. It's like, well, here's what happened. We had to have a house rule. No touching the joystick when you're pinned.
Right, yeah. You got to leave it alone, yeah.
But between those wrestling games, GoldenEye, Mario Kart, 1080 snowboarding, some of the greatest times of my childhood.
Yeah.
Were revolved around you, Andrew, and DeJuan.
That's awesome. I appreciate it.
And I look back so fondly on those times. So whenever you said, like, when you sent me that message, like, man, this is going to be great. I hadn't seen Chad in years.
Yeah.
And just the idea of to be able to relive some of those memories.
The cinnamon buns, the
cinnamon buns, the Doritos,
the Doritos,
the bacon.
Yeah, when we got Doritos, when we were preparing for these times we all got together, we had to get a bag of Doritos separate for Eric.
The party size. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Eric had his own bag of Doritos, and then everybody else had the other stuff. Yeah, it was great. I honestly enjoyed it so much, and was able to kind of live vicariously through y'all because there's 13 years difference between Andrew and I, and so I was kind of feeling that parental role at that point too, but it was still great to be able to relate to you guys and just have such a great time because we all really did get along well together and have so much fun.
I finally got a Nintendo 64. I still have it. I still have those games.
Yeah.
I still play those games whenever I get bored. I'll go pull it out and play it.
In my opinion, those were the best games, and probably even to this day.
To this day. They will never top. I know I have a Switch now, and they're fun, and I love going back and playing the Switch online stuff.
Yeah.
But nothing will ever top a Friday night, Saturday morning, Royal Rumble, Battle Royal, ladder match, whatever. Create a character. You had your own character, Big Daddy Chad.
Yeah, Big Daddy Chad.
That's how I responded to you when you.
That's right.
We had the Big E. We had all these characters that we created of ourselves.
Oh yeah.
And nothing will ever top that. So it's been fun just reliving that.
Oh yeah, awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for today's episode. Again, make sure you catch us on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is you get your podcast. Chad, can they find you on social media anywhere? Do you want to share that, or do you just?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Chad E. Bear. Facebook under my normal name, Chad Casey. Anywhere. Just look me up if you need anything built or anything like that. Love to help with that too. So
fantastic. As always, I'm at EricoMac15 on Instagram and Twitter. Big thank you to Ricky Lyles for his contribution to our podcast and to Kyle and Ashby for allowing us to do this in Ashby's house. We're at Ashby's house doing this, and her and Kyle are just waiting outside for us to finish. True friendship right there. Thank you all for joining us today. Stay as cool as the other side of the pillow. Join us next week for the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie that came out in 1995, and then catch Chad in 2 weeks with our finale, the 90s movie draft. We'll see you next time on the What the What podcast. Bye.
See ya.